and the IMF is forecasting a slower recovery. Gita Gopinath is with me, the chief economist at the IMF. When I read the report, or the summary of the WEO, World Economic Outlook, this morning, good to see you, Gita. When I read your work this morning, two aspects to your revision. First, the time so far has been worse than expected, but perhaps more important, you're factoring in longer periods of social distancing and more extreme mitigation measures.
Indeed, Richard, what we do have is the fact that we don't have a medical breakthrough at this point, and so we still have a health crisis. So that would then, you would expect to have more persistent social distancing into the second half of this year and a slower recovery going forward.
That said, the backlog, if you like, from March till now was worse, as the numbers have come in, has been worse than had been anticipated. Where was the problem there? What was it? Was it simply the size and scale of this?
I think it was a combination of things. One, the lockdown was longer than was anticipated in April in many countries, and the impact was more severe, especially in the first half of the second quarter. Now, it is fair to say that the first and the second quarter were probably the deepest in terms of contractions and what we're projecting. And, and now as countries reopen, we are seeing a pickup in growth. But the speed of that recovery and how long it can sustain itself is highly uncertain.
What's the practical effect of this lower number? I mean, there's a $12 trillion cost of the coronavirus, which is sounds horrific, and indeed is horrific. But in terms of recovery of jobs, what do you think it's going to be like?
So, I mean, our projections is that there is going to be a recovery, but it's going to be slow. It's going to be gradual. And for pretty much all countries in the world, by the end of 2021, they will still be below their pre-crisis GDP levels. And unemployment rates will remain elevated for a very long period, because the workers that are being hit are the low-skilled workers, the low-income workers. And what we know from past experience is that it can take a long time for these workers to get back up into full employment.
Gita, honestly, I'm not taking you into political waters, but when you see the situation in the United States and the worsening, I mean, on the one hand, Europe is opening and picking up, but the United States is showing every sign of needing to have more stringent measures. If the US economy does not pick up as you planned, what happens then?
Well, we have considered a scenario where there is a serious second wave in the world economy. And in that case, growth in 2021, which we are now projecting to be 5.4%, will be close to 0%. So that would be a really very large hit, and it would look like a true L-shaped non-recovery, as you might say. But I think what countries still haven't done enough of is realize that this is a health crisis, which means you need to have sufficient health capacity, testing, tracing, contact tracing, enough isolation possibilities, and that still is not in place in terms of medical equipment and medical facilities, and a lot more needs to be done there.
Later in the programme, we're going to be hearing about South Africa and the budget there, and without sort of specifically commenting on South Africa, but I look at countries like South Africa that have no fiscal headroom for really large-scale stimulus extra budget. You look at emerging markets that are being clobbered on commodity prices and haven't really grasped the full nettle of the health crisis to which you talk about. I don't know, Gita, where the help comes from for those economies.
I mean, Richard, countries around the world are needing to do a lot of spending, and including countries like South Africa have actually put significant stimulus in place, though nowhere of the magnitude that advanced economies are doing. Now, what has absolutely helped is that while there is a real crisis, we don't have a financial crisis at this point. And that is because of the unprecedented central bank support, fiscal support around the world, which has meant that actually portfolio flows to many emerging markets that were tanking in March have stabilized, and credit spreads for these countries have actually come down. So for now, they do have access to finance. But if the financial situation changes quite sharply, and as we saw today, negative news on the health front can trigger that, then that can change dramatically, in which case international institutions, including IMF, of course, will step up and do what is needed.
Gita, it is good to see you. Thank you. I appreciate the time today. Thank you.